We're going to continue singing here in just a little, but I want to share a story with you guys. Story of a man in John chapter 9 whose encounter with Jesus changed his life forever. Story goes, as Jesus was walking along, he saw a man who had been blind from birth. Rabbi, his disciples asked him, why was this man born blind? Was it because of his own sins or his parents' sins? It was not because of his sins or his parents' sins, Jesus answered. This happened so the power of God might be seen in him. We must quickly carry out the task assigned us by the one who sent us. The night is coming, and then no one can work. But while I am here in the world, I am the light of the world. Then he spit on the ground, made mud with the saliva, and spread the mud over the blind man's eyes. He told him, go wash yourself in the pool of Siloam. So the man went and washed and came back seeing. His neighbors and others who knew him as a blind beggar asked each other, isn't this the man who used to sit and beg? Some said he was, and others said, no, he just looks like him. But the beggar kept saying, yes, I am the same one. They asked, who healed you? What happened? He told them, the man they called Jesus made mud and spread it over my eyes and told me, go to the pool of Siloam and wash yourself. So I went and washed, and now I can see. Now, I was born with sight. I've always had my vision. But I can make some pretty educated assumptions on what it's like to be blind. I think if you're blind, everything is more difficult. I think if you're blind, you can't experience life to the fullest. I may not relate to this man in a physical sense, but metaphorically I do, because spiritually, I was born blind. I want to give a quick definition to that term real quick because I'm going to use it a few times this morning. Spiritual blindness is thinking your way of living is better than God's. Your way of living is better than God's. I was born spiritually blind. Some of you may know me around here as the guy who comes up, welcomes you to church on a Sunday morning, relays some information, and I'm on staff here at Expedition. I primarily help out with our youth ministries, our high school and middle school youth ministries, and I'd like to believe I built a pretty good reputation for myself in this town. I'd like to believe. A man can dream. But for those of you who don't know me, my name is Adrian. I'm 23 years old. I'm originally from Orange County, California. I first came to Payson at 18 years old to check myself into a rehabilitation program on Frontier Street called U-Turn for Christ. And it's here in U-Turn where I first truly encountered God. Growing up my whole life, I thought I knew God. I thought I knew him, and I thought I knew how he wanted me to live, which as a teenager just sounded like a long list of don'ts. Don't do this, don't do that, don't do that, don't do this. Growing up, I thought I knew God, and I thought I knew how he wanted me to live. Come to realize, I didn't know God. I knew of God, but I didn't know God. 2 months into U-Turn, I decided to give my life to Christ. And as I gave my life to Christ, I thought, that's all there was to it. You give your life to Christ, the rest is history. Never in a million years did I think Jesus would ask me to follow him. The first opportunity I got to follow Jesus was when I finished U-Turn. He said, you can stay in Payson, which I want you to do, or you can go back to California. At 18 years old, I came to the conclusion, Payson sucks. I'm going back to California. So that's exactly what I did. I went back to California. Fast forward 6 months, I'm back in Payson, in rehab, for the second time at 18 years old. Not the brightest guy. But this time I stayed for a much longer period of time. I stayed for 14 months total the second time I came into U-Turn. And this time, I came to a different conclusion. My way's not getting me very far. So, God, I'm ready to take you serious. I'm ready to give you everything I've got. I'm ready to do this together. I'm ready for you to lead me. I'm ready to follow you. Just tell me what I got to do. The more I began learning about God, the more I began learning about how he really wanted me to live as a follower of his. And it was not a list of do's and don'ts like I thought it was as a teenager. It was not, don't do this, don't do that, don't do that, don't do this. But rather, it was a list of beings. Being selfless, being humble, being compassionate, being gracious, being merciful, being loving. Loving others more than I love myself. And as I began to learn about how God really wanted me to live, I became terrifyingly aware that none of those things come natural to me. And in this moment, I got desperate. And I prayed to God in desperation, God, I am blind to how your way of life is better than my own. I can see your way, I just can't do it. I'm blind, Lord, but I don't want to stay this way. I want to do things your way, but if I can be honest, God, which you can always be honest with God. God, if I can be honest with you, your way just seems really difficult. And my way just seems really safe. I want to do things your way, Lord, but I just can't see how it's better. I can't see how I can ever get ahead if I'm selflessly giving all the time. I can't see how I can ever make it to the top if I'm humbling myself to the lowest position every chance I get. God, it's hard to treat people with compassion all the time when everybody in my life seemingly treats me like garbage. God, I want to do things your way, but for 18 years, I've been hurt. I've been burned. I've been scarred. I've been broken. God, I'm blind to how your way of living is better than my own. But I don't want to stay this way. I remember that prayer. And the reason I share this story with you this morning is because I don't think there's one person in this room who is not blind to how God's way of living is better than their own in some area or another. I think everybody in this room thinks their way of living life is better than God's in one area or another. I got some news for y'all this morning. I got some bad news for y'all this morning. You are blind. You are blind to how God's way of living is better than your own. You are blind to how your way of living is making everything more difficult. You are blind to how your way of life is not allowing you to experience life to the fullest. Now, before that sinks in too deep, I got some good news for you. You guys want to hear the good news? All right, check out the good news. Blindness is not an incurable symptom for Jesus. I repeat, blindness is not an incurable symptom for Jesus. I am walking, talking, living proof that God gives sight to the blind. He is eager to help those who call on his name. He specializes in putting broken pieces back together. He specializes in smoothing the scars, in cooling the burns, in redemption, in second chances. Jesus said so himself, I did not come for those who are well. I came for those in need of a physician. We can't cure our own blindness, but God can. We can't fix ourselves, but God can. We can't live these lives perfectly without making any mistakes, but God did. And he wants to help you live this life and experience it to the fullest. Like the man in John chapter 9, we're all born spiritually blind. Funny thing about being born blind, you don't know you're blind until someone tells you. Once you know you're blind, you can ask God for help. I know the day I prayed that prayer, that admission of blindness, where I confessed to God that I'm blind and there's nothing I can do in my power to fix it, is the day everything started to change. It's the day deep inner emotions started to change. It's the day deep, horrible thoughts started to change. It's the day the way I viewed the whole world took a shift. I believe in the power of prayer. And because I believe in the power of prayer, I know that changed my life. And I know it can change yours. So I want to ask you all to stand as I lead us in a prayer. Please repeat after me. God, I am blind, but I do not want to stay this way. I hear you're eager to help those who call on your name. God, up until this point, I've been blind. But as I go on, help me see. Amen.